Good.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock.
Good one, Dean.
Do we have any public comments of anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Now I'd like to welcome everybody here. We have a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Then we have a consideration of approval of the minutes of January 24th, 28th, 31st, and 4th meetings.
So move. Second.
Any questions on the minutes? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Next is approval of the consent calendar. Do we have any questions on the consent calendar?
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Business of the mayor, I do have a few things tonight. I got a request from the, I don't know if it's the Iowa Beekeepers Association, but the governor is signing a proclamation to honor beekeepers and honeybees this month, and so we thought we would do that locally also. We have some honeybee people here. Are you at the honeybee group? No. Angie? And you want to stand up to the microphone, just introduce yourself?
Angie Tudor.
And you are a local beekeeper?
Yes, we're out by Cowell.
Good. Well, appreciate you being with us tonight. I will pass this proclamation, then I'll come down and read it for you, and we'll even let you take it home with you if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe on a real nice hot day this summer, they'll take you out and show you the bees.
If it ever gets here, right?
All right, do we have any questions for Angie or a motion to approve the proclamation?
I'd so move.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
I like your shirt.
Thank you.
Baker.
All right. Whereas honeybees and native insects are important as pollinators for... Got to get away from the speaker. We'll come on over here. Whereas honeybees and native insects are important as pollinators for a third of the food we eat, and honeybees are vital in production of over 90 crops grown across the nation, many of which are in Iowa, honeybees contribute to the healthy Iowa environment by assuring availability of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and flowers for wildlife and all Iowans. And whereas Iowa's 45,000 or more honeybee hives produced about 4 million pounds of honey valued at over $8 million, and honeybees provide an estimated $92 million in economic value to Iowa crops from their pollination. And whereas Iowa has over 4,500 beekeepers representing hobbyists, sideliners as part-time businesses, and full-time commercial beekeepers, hobby beekeepers have as few as one hive to commercial operations with thousands of hives. And whereas traditionally beekeeping occurred in rural areas of Iowa, now beekeeping increasingly occurs in urban areas with the rising interest of hobby beekeepers for keeping beehives in Iowa cities and towns. And whereas the state of Iowa has an active apiary inspection program to protect honeybees and beekeepers from introduction and spread of apiary diseases and pests. And whereas honeybees face serious threats from invasive pests, decreasing bee-friendly forage, variable climate, and increasing pesticide and herbicide pressure. Therefore, now I, Dean Andrews, Mayor of Charles City, Iowa, do hereby proclaim February 27th, 2019 as Honeybee Day. in the city of Charles City, and encourage all citizens, residents, and visitors to join in observing this day and focusing on the importance of honeybees to our state economy, to enjoy their honey and other products of honeybees, to recognize the honeybees' role in maintaining our Iowa environment, and to assist in reducing the threat to honeybee survival in our state. And signed by myself. And so we appreciate you coming tonight. We had a couple other honeybee enthusiasts who I invited, but I think the weather maybe held them back. And you're the one who said you might not be here with the weather, so I appreciate you making the effort to come, and we will give that to you. And we appreciate we all understand the importance of honeybees, so it's nice that how many hives do you have?
We have 6.
6 hives?
Not sure how many's going to make it through the winter. Yeah.
Yeah.
His dad had up to 26 at one time when he was alive, yeah.
Cool.
So.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
very nice. Well, thank you for coming.
Yep, thanks, Nate.
You don't have to stay if you don't want to. Unless you really want
She
to.
also was not kicking you out.
I know, yeah, I don't want
Yeah,
you
you're
to think we're
welcome to
kicking you
you're
out. I know,
welcome to
you're
stay.
welcome to stay, but you don't have to. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I have an appointment of a couple individuals to the Broadband Commission. The Broadband Commission has been very active lately, and we had one member whose term was up and decided not to go for another term, and another member who's moving out of town, and you do have to be a city resident to be a Broadband Commissioner. And so I'd like to appoint Cheryl Erb and Katie Mead to take the places of Kim Wilson and Sarah Downing on the Broadband Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
The appointments are approved. We thank Kim and Sarah for the years that they put in working over at the commission. And Cheryl's already been to one broadband meeting, and Katie, I told her we have one next week, so they're going to get right into the fray here right off the bat. So thanks to them. And just one other thing, I had a citizen stop me today and wanted to express his appreciation to the city crews for all the work they've been doing here in the last few weeks. He really thought they've been doing a great job. He knows they've been putting in a lot of hours and wondering where they're going to put the snow, and so he just wanted me to express that appreciation to them. So I'll talk to Dirk too, but I think we all are kind of thankful for all the work they've been doing, because they've certainly been putting in their fair share of time, I would say, these last few weeks.
They have been.
Nothing else on my agenda, so let's move on to number 9, public hearing on the Southwest Development Park Drainage Project. We'll open the hearing. Do we have a filing of affidavit of publication?
Yes, Your Honor.
How about any written comments or objections?
None, Your Honor.
Any oral comments or objections?
Move to close.
Second.
Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
The hearing is closed. We'll next have consideration of Resolution 1819, which is rejecting the bids for the Southwest Development Park Drainage Project. Discussion for this one. John?
Yeah, this project, the drainage project, first began with SEH engineers working with Tim Fox and the Area Development Corporation. They did a drainage study, and then the city was asked to pick up the study and implement it through a construction project. We had SEH engineers prepare the plans and specifications for the study, or from the study. And basically the intent of the project was through detention basins, cleaning out the drainage ways, and putting in a new culvert underneath 11th Street was to limit the amount of storm water flowing through the drainage the industrial park, and limit that localized flooding that's been occurring down by the Winnebago plant. Last Thursday, we opened up bids. We had a lot of interest in the project. We got 13 bids. Riley Construction, they were the low bidder at $427,364. And you can see there we had a couple of bids in the $430,000, then a couple at $450,000, and on up to $739,000. Unfortunately, the bids were all above the engineer's cost opinion, and they exceeded the amount of budgeted funds we had for the project. So we're recommending the council reject the bids, and what we'll do is start working with SEH and ADC to rework this project and try to prepare a project that will that will limit those stormwater flows as well as meet the budget. So we would recommend resolution number 18-19 be approved.
Any questions for John?
John, in the bids for this project or the bid documents, was it bid out in pieces or not? Or am I getting it confused with another project?
It was bid, in units,
Right.
but there were no alternatives. It was,
It was one deal.
one project, yeah.
Okay.
And part of that was, I know SEH has some concerns as far as, if you almost have to do kind of everything. If you put in a bigger culvert but don't limit the flows, you're just going to push more water downstream. And that's where we have to go back and try to rework the project and get something that still meets, meets the intent of the study, yet we can do something that is a reduced scope.
So basically, at this point, we're not going to move forward with the culvert side of this either that we had talked about doing as far as the city?
Not without not without detention.
Okay.
Any further questions? I know the Area Development Asset Management Group has a meeting set up next week with SEH to kind of reevaluate the situation, kind of see where we can go. If there, if there's, like you say, if there's alternates that we can do that we have the money maybe for, but if there's something we can do that would help the problem but maybe not totally correct it, or if it's an all or nothing type of a deal, if we just have to find more funding for it.
I know when the Southwest board had looked at this, they'd agreed to put some money into this process also, but it was kind of the thoughts of that group that some of the property owners out there needed to be involved in this process as well. So,
And so I think maybe if we have this meeting with SCH, maybe we can kind of more detail it to the property owners as far as how it's going to benefit them, so that maybe we can get some more information or more buy-in from some of the property owners for helping to fund this, possibly. I don't know, but I think if we can show them what the value is, maybe we'll get some more help in the private sector.
Yeah, we'll re-kick that off starting next Tuesday.
Any other questions?
would move for approval of resolution number 18-19.
Second.
Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
So we'll go back and retread, I guess. Huh? Next is consideration of third and final reading of Ordinance 1126 for the increasing of the minimum monthly charge and user charge for the rates for the City of Charles City. Discussion on this one.
Yeah, so basically what we're looking at here, this is our third and final reading on the ordinance that increases the sewer rates in the city. This is based off of the proformas that we've put together for the new plant, which will be coming online, and we've discussed that this is going to be to pay our 30-year loan that we're going to have with the state revolving fund. We've talked about, we're looking at a 20% increase, and, I'm grateful that we're not looking at a larger increase. We have been able to put some monies aside. Historically speaking, we've had annual bumps in our sewer rates, and so that really helped offset this, bigger increase that we knew that was going to be coming. In your packet, I've put together a breakdown there of how this will, impact, day-to-day users, and I put a couple scenarios in there, whether you're a 2,000 gallon, 4,000, 6,000, or 8,000 gallon user, and taking the example of like a 6,000 gallon a month user, that's a pretty heavy user for water, and so if you're in that ballpark, you'd be looking at about a $7.75 increase per month. It's a good amount, but it's not overly huge. I think it's something that's at least palatable, and it is what it is. So luckily we're looking at that, and if we haven't been doing our increases, we'd be looking at that same user would be looking at about a $19 a month increase. So gives you some perspective there for that. But assuming we approve this tonight, we will publish the ordinance, and then this will be ready for March billings, and so it'll show up initially for the first time on April utility bill statements.
Has anyone had any comments regarding this, as far as staff or council?
I can't say that I have. No, I
haven't
mean,
received any either.
Did we get this? I know the last time we talked about making sure this was on like the city website and
I put
yep,
it out
yep.
on the
Trudy got
website.
it up on the website.
every place that we could to make people aware. So
Yeah, and I've talked about it on the radio segment that I do at least a couple times, and so trying to get the word out there. And I think most people understand, that they know we're doing a big project, and nobody likes to see rate increases, but
but there will sure be a few that when they get their first bill that will become interested.
I was just going to say that we've had some on the garbage, because the garbage ones are.
I'd so move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero. Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
We'll have the third reading of ordinance 1126.
An ordinance amending section 99.06, user charges of the Charles City Code of Ordinances for the purpose of increasing the minimum monthly charge and user charge rate for the City of Charles City's wastewater treatment works.
Thank you. Next, we have a motion to adopt and publish ordinance 1126.
So moved.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero. Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
All right, next is the second reading of ordinance 1127, which is vacating a portion of 6th Avenue and alleyways at 500 North Grand. Discussion on the ordinance.
Yes, this is the second reading of ordinance 1127, and this ordinance is vacating certain right-of-ways up in the, well, it's in the vicinity of the former middle school, the 500 North Grand building. This goes back to when the building was originally built. Some of the proceedings at that time, when the right-of-ways were vacated, they weren't followed properly, and this has caused some title opinion issues for the school system. So what we're doing is just going through and re-vacating those same right-of-ways. And what that is, and I've included a aerial view of that. It's 6th Avenue between North Grand and D Street, and the alley between 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue, as well as a short segment of the alley between 6th Avenue and the relocated 6th Avenue. At the last council meeting, a public hearing was held, and the first reading of the ordinance was approved. We've not received any comments, so I'd recommend the council approve the second reading of ordinance 1127.
So move the second reading.
Second.
Any further discussion on this item?
We're just cleaning things up that should have been done a long time ago.
Yep.
Clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
And we'll have the second reading.
Ordinance number 1127, an ordinance vacating a portion of 6th Avenue and alleyways at 500 North Grand Avenue.
Thank you. Next is consideration of Resolution 1919, accepting deed. Discussion here.
Yeah, basically what this is this is the acceptance of the deed for the property from Mario Villalobos that the city has acquired out by Shaw Avenue by the wastewater treatment plant, part of our WRRF project. Anything additional, Brad?
No, more or less a formality. The transaction's been concluded, but we're required to accept the conveyance,
So moved.
we didn't have the documents in time to have it on the last council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Star.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Resolution 1919 is passed, and we'll then have consideration of Resolution 2019, which is setting the public hearing on the fiscal year 20 budget. Discussion here.
Yeah, so we've concluded our budget process, and we have a proposed budget that we're setting public hearing for. The public hearing will be on March 4th at 6 p.m. Generally speaking, as far as the levy rate goes, we're looking at a levy rate of $15.90. That's an increase of 7 cents. Given all the activities that we've got going on, and most notably, the transit system, keeping that, we were expecting probably an increase in what we need to levy for that transit, which we're seeing, but certainly could have been a lot more. So pretty happy with that. But otherwise, yeah, I did put together some, Trudy updated the fund balance sheets, so you've got all those. I emailed them to you, and you have hard copies in front of you. Kind of shows you where the fund balances end up. Also did the pie chart thing again to kind of break down all the funds, revenues and expenditures, and then on the back side, there's also a breakdown of the general fund itself. So helps give you an idea as to, the revenues coming in are a little bit tricky to see on there, but you can see on the expenditure side where they're kind of going out to. So with that, I recommend approval of resolution to set public hearing.
Any questions or discussion?
I think thanks to everybody that did a lot of work on this. And I'd move for the adoption of it.
Second.
You're moving for the public hearing,
Hearing,
correct?
yeah.
Public hearing, yeah.
Adoption of the resolution.
Whatever it is.
Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
Resolution 2019 passes, and that public hearing will be at the March 4th meeting. Next is consideration of Resolution 2119, which is approving TAP application for funding. John?
Yeah, this is in regard to the Charlie Western Trail new bridge construction. Last year, we submitted a number of grant requests, and one was for a TAP grant. TAP stands for a Transportation Alternatives Program. It's a federally funded program. And we were awarded $249,000 for the bridge. And now is a new funding cycle, and we can submit another application for more TAP funding on the same project. And that's what we want to do. And we do this through NICOG. And part of the application requires a resolution or an endorsement from the City Council, and in particular that the city will maintain the project for at least 20 years. So I would end, the applications are due at the end of the month, and so as soon as I get the grant put together, and once I have the signed resolution, we'll get that over to NICOG. So I'd recommend approval of Resolution 2119 for the applying for the second TAP grant.
Any discussion on questions for John?
This is about the only money we've got right now to fund this project, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
That's what I was
Oh,
thinking.
I don't know about that. I think we have a few places we got some money
Well,
coming from.
I mean, but for grants,
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's not there yet. Right, Steve?
Yeah, we're a little short. We're working on narrowing that.
Yeah, it's coming, but
We're bridging that gap, you might say.
Oh, man.
I could have,
Oh, man.
chose not to. Yeah.
yeah, get on.
Any further discussion?
You were just trying to say that.
Hoping we don't fall in the creek.
I would so move.
Second.
He's been itching the whole meeting, just get this one right here. He's saving it.
I would so move, Your
Who
Honor.
seconded that? Did
I
you,
did.
Delane?
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
And last year, we also applied for the REAP grant and the state and federal trail fund grants, and I think the plan is to apply for the REAP and the state trail fund grants again this year, but those are this summer, sometime they come due.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of proceed along those lines too, and hopefully, maybe our second time around on those will get us some funding there too, so,
Also going to be looking at a private
correct.
funding campaign as well for whatever we can raise.
Yep. All right, next is Resolution 2219, accepting a quote for the trimming of right-of-way trees. Discussion on this one.
Yes, we've got 2 quotes for trimming trees in the right-of-way. And one is for $150,096, another one is for $269,040. So we do have a kind of clear-cut low quote on this. And just to give some background, we've had a lot of discussion on, trimming the trees in the right-of-way. And as far as, the need on the street side of, cutting it back to 15 feet on street side, 8 feet on sidewalk side. We have also talked about how our code requires that the abutting property owner, be responsible for trimming the trees. It also gives the city the authority to trim them if we need to. But while we require the abutting property to trim the trees, our code further requires that the tree trimming work be done by a licensed and bonded tree trimmer. So, so there's a little bit of the conflict there. We also, discussed about the sheer number of trees that we do have to trim, which is about 2,832 trees at this time. We've talked about how it would be much more efficient to contract with a single tree trimmer to have all the trees trimmed rather than having individual people, required to go out and trim them and getting them done timely. So with that, we've bid out the tree trimming work. The question we've also discussed is, who ultimately pays for this? Is this something that the city pays for? Is this something that we bill back to the homeowners? How much time do you effectively allow people to trim the trees? All that type of good stuff. So at this price, this $150,096, it works out to be $53 a tree. And from a like I mentioned, from a timing perspective, the city could look to do this work, have this part of it done this spring of 19 and fall of 19, which would fall into 2 fiscal years, and we'd look to get this done over one season over 2 fiscal years. So, and we currently have that budget out of the road use tax. So following up on some of our discussion we've had on how to handle the trees, I did put this out on the city administrator listserv, and I got some good feedback from some other communities, which I attached that in your packet there to kind of show what a lot of other communities do, and had about 14 responses, and pretty much, I just asked them a few questions, whether they, whose responsibility it is to trim, the city or the abutting property owner, and there's some variance there, but most of them it's the city's responsibility. Some it's the abutting property owner, such as us. Who can trim them? None of them restrict trimming to just the city, with the exception of, ironically, Forest City. The city is required. The city trims it, and so that's something that they're actually talked about looking to change. But so is it as important to restrict that private property owner from trimming the tree? I think we've talked about why would something like that be in place, and maybe it's a liability factor. Is it that much of a liability factor? Maybe not. You know, maybe that's something we look at, maybe amending in our code to allow. It seems that, you know, a lot of other communities take that route, so that would be something to consider. I also asked how the tree trimming cost is paid. A lot of them, the city covers the cost, whether it be through, you know, taxes, road use tax. Some have utilities where they do the trimming. One community has a franchise, has put a franchise fee in place, and part of that franchise fee covers the maintenance of trees, so that was interesting. Another community has a tree utility, or what do they call that? Where is it? Anyway, it's basically like what we talked about a little bit with our waste fund, you know, that we pay for spring cleanup. They do something similar along those lines for where they charge a monthly amount on the utility bill for not only removal of trees, like diseased and dying trees, but also the trimming of trees. So they pay for it through collection that way.
Is that old line? The Tree Enterprise Fund?
Tree Enterprise. That's it. So that's interesting. So there's some you know, thoughts on how some other places are looking at doing it. And I guess first and foremost today, we'd like to accept this low quote here from Cedar Creek Tree Service for $150,096. So we could at least go ahead and get that on the books and get that started as far as getting those trees trimmed back this summer. Thoughts or comments?
To me, I think this is definitely something we need to do, but I also think we're setting a precedence that kind of runs a little bit against our present ordinance and things as far as how we're going to go about it. So I think we definitely need to bring that back up at a later date, and based on the information you've got here, and thank you for doing that, we need to amend that ordinance to bring it in line what we're going to be doing going forward, I think.
And I think our approach prevents precedents from going to place saying, listen, we haven't been managing this ordinance for several years. We're going to bite the bullet on this one, time to take care of it. We will allow property owners to maintain their trees. Going forward, it'll be their responsibility, treated similar to a long grass nuisance, like the vast majority of things are doing. That way, we're saying, hey, listen, we understand. We'll take it on the chin. We understood, you know, we haven't been managing this properly. But going forward, you are the responsible party, and you'll be taking care of it, or you will be given a notice. I think that's how I think we avoid that precedent setting, saying that we're going to take care of it every time. But then, as Dwayne says, we need to bring this back and actually finalize this and get it to that standard we're looking for.
Yeah, and it might be something we do like with rental inspections, where, you know, each winter, whenever it doesn't snow, we have some, you know, city crew go out and inspect a quadrant of town and kind of see if there's areas, trees that need to be trimmed and doing it. But now we've just got so many now, it's not practical to do that right now. But we can certainly have further discussion of this brought up on an upcoming workshop.
Well, appreciate your research on this too. That definitely helps to see what our communities are doing, to see how far off we are, how in line we are. It helps to not have to reinvent the wheel on something as simple as this.
Still need a motion on the bid. I move we accept the bid for $150,096.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Resolution passes. At the risk of being removed from the meeting, it's just nice to know that we had a clear-cut low bid.
Oh.
Is that a motion to adjourn? Is
You're
that
pushing on it, Honor. You're pushing on it.
That's two.
third striking, you're
They
out?
always come in threes, you know.
The Gong Show will have a big hook. We'll hook you.
Moving to Resolution 1419, which is awarding the contract for the wayfinding signage. Go ahead, John. We'll see if we can see our way through this.
Good luck.
That's it. We're
That
out.
was number 3, you know.
Find your direction.
As we've talked about before, we had 6 bids for the wayfinding project, and Signs and More out of Independence, they submitted the low bid at $157,427.99. And as you know, that was considerably that was a low bid. Since I have talked with Signs and More, and they were well aware of where they were at in the pack of bids, and they were confident in their numbers. They said that they basically operate in a lean shop. They can have a lower overhead than many other competitors, and they several times they said that they were confident in their numbers. And I also talked to Jeff Frank with Corbin Design Group. They were the designers on the project. He didn't see any red flags. He did indicate that you know, it is a low bid, and we'll just have to watch them. And what we would be doing anyway with any project, with any contractor, we'll be doing the inspection. Also, the you know, the way that it was set up, everything's spec'd out, it's specified, and the contractors, they have to provide what's specified. The only thing they did, they provided us a cost for what they were going to do their work for. So since since our review, we didn't see any reason to label Signs and More as a unresponsive bid, and so we see no reason in rejecting that bid. So I'd recommend approval of Resolution 1419, and the council award the project to Signs and More, as well as approving the contract and bond.
Questions, discussion?
I so move.
Second.
Any other questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Resolution 1419 is approved, and that'll be a good project to get taken care of this summer. Quite a project. Next is Resolution 2319, which is setting the date for a public hearing to enter into general obligation loan agreements. Discussion.
Yeah, what this is basically we you know, each year we look at grouping a number of things together that qualify as either essential or non-essential corporate purpose items, and then borrow funds for those to be used for that next fiscal year budget. So we're doing the same again this year. As you can see from the list, you know, we've got police equipment, fire equipment, city hall equipment, park and rec, tree removal, street trees, funds for the work at 4001 North Main, demo nuisance abatement. Those are some of the items that we're going to be, you know, borrowing funds for. So we're going to be setting public hearing for March 4th to discuss those for both the general corporate purpose and the central corporate purpose items.
Any questions on this resolution?
We've done this for years and years now, and it's always seemed to have worked well for us.
Yep.
Allows us to make our budgets work. I'd so move.
Second.
Further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Resolution passes, and that public hearing will be at our March 4th meeting then? Okay. Any other miscellaneous correspondence tonight?
None, Your Honor.
Brad, any report from you tonight?
No, Your Honor.
City Clerk's report.
Our next meeting will be a planning session on February 25th at 6 o'clock.
February what?
25th.
Steve, any report for the city administrator tonight?
Yeah, just mention that, you know, we applied for hotel motel tax to help cover the cost of the entryway over at 401 North Main for the visitors information portion of the project, help offset some of those costs, and that full $10,000 that we requested was awarded. So we've got $50,000 in funding for that project. John and I are going to be meeting with the architect again on tomorrow to further discuss that project, and so happy to know that we've got the funding hopefully lined up for all of it, and hopefully the bids come in low for the work. So that was exciting. Telecom project, we talked about, Mayor talked about that a little bit with our update with our 2 new board members. We were, the Broadband Commission met last week, we were updated that all the engineering work is completed. So all the layout, so the late winter and all the snow getting now compressed towards the end was a benefit here, in that they were able to get all that work done. So all whether they go up this street or that street or where the trees and rocks are at, that's all known and laid out. And so now Eric Lamplin's able to take that information and input it into the business plan, which he's working on to hopefully to ultimately come up with a total price for us. Some of the key things coming up that we need to decide so he can finish that process is site location. Where's it going to be located? We've looked at the 401 Chamber building as a possible spot for equipment, but that doesn't lend itself for any staffing unless we want to find a new home for Chamber, ADC, and those folks. So I've also toured the Mills building up here, and that's got a lot of space in it. That could be a possible location. 500 North Grand, the 1970s portion, which the developer is now looking at working with that. That's part of the area that the school will retain. Is that a location that we could? Something we need to figure that out here probably within the next 4 weeks to be able to say this is where it's going to be, so they can put all the coordinate all the equipment appropriately. So site location, board creation. When do we create the board? When we pass this referendum to say yes, we want to have the ability to start our own municipal telecom. The second question was, will we have the city council oversee it, or will it have a separate operating board? And it was voted yes to have a separate operating board. So we need to determine, when does that board get appointed? When does that start functioning? Who do we appoint to that board? That's something we have to give some serious consideration to. Because you're going to be managing more than just $60,000 a year in franchise money. You're going to be looking at a much bigger project. So, and then hiring the first employee, that's another big part. We've talked about that. You want to have somebody on early on as part of the decision-making process for the equipment. So that's something that needs to be figured out. So project's moving along. We toured the 500 North Grand building last Friday, and so we're going to be looking at more sites coming up here. Transit interviews, we're doing those tomorrow. I've got about 3 interviews to fill that open driver spot. The wastewater treatment plant project, or the WRRF, our next project update meeting with Fox is March 8th. And looking at the general timeline right now, they have awarding of the bid on July 22nd, which is much further out than we're hoping. We're hoping to get that crunched up sooner if at all possible, but right now that's the general date that we're looking at. With that, our last appraisal has come in on the property out there for Detmers, so we'll have that on an upcoming council meeting to go into closed session and discuss that. And lastly, I just mentioned that we've got the information back on the TEEP study, which is the engineering study up here to do it at Highway 18 in North Grand at that Casey's intersection. And they've set that up to have a meeting next Thursday to discuss that and discuss the likelihood of wrapping that in with the Highway 18 reconstruction project. So hopefully to tie all those together and do all that. So that's what I got for you tonight.
A lot of information. I did see, looking on the league legislative update, there's a bill in the House or one of them to define the authority of the council with the broadband commissions. Currently, I think the council and mayor have some say on removing people from that board, and there's a bill to make it so that that's not going to be possible, that they're to give them more security, I guess, or autonomy. Yes.
Yes, there is. There's a bill out there that's been proposed that would basically eliminate the city from appointing board members. I can see that both ways. I've kind of experienced issues both ways on that, so I can see that. But, that's, something that's, I think, certainly tricky in our aspect, because, we're the ones on the city side, putting all this effort in and, probably borrowing money. I mean, eventually, I suppose that liability transfers over to the utility, but, it's a big project to say, okay, here are the keys, go get them. So that's why we have to be very mindful of who we appoint,
Yeah.
And right now, it's a mayor appointment with council confirmation for 6-year terms, but that is something that they're looking at changing possibly.
Just as long as we're talking about that broadband commission, does that continue on after the board is seated, or does the broadband commission just go away, that a lot of the existing members of the broadband commission could become the board, at least some of the initial board?
We've had that discussion a little bit, and it was one thing when they oversaw negotiation of the franchise fee agreements. Now the state and their benevolence does that for us, and so that's not a big task. So right now it's they've been very active, because of the broadband discussion we're having. But otherwise, they award the computer grants and different things like that. I don't know if there's anything legally that requires us to have that. I mean, that's something we'd have to look into, and maybe that's something that the utility board could, that could be a secondary responsibility of theirs, is to oversee that for us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that there's a distinct possibility that many of our existing commissioners could make good board utility board members, certainly. But whether we can eliminate it altogether, I guess.
Yeah, I just was curious. I didn't know how that would work.
Once we get done with this project, they don't, there's not, well, the local access channel, I guess, they oversee that and that 2080. So, I mean, there's that too.
Okay, any other questions? Any board, commission, or committee reports from anybody?
Yes, as Steve had alluded to, the hotel motel tax tourism steering committee met last week, day prior to Valentine's Day. I will not issue any puns or anything related to that. Just wanted to make that a note. We received 5 grant applications. All 5 presented unique opportunities. That was a pretty exciting meeting, and all 5 grant applications were awarded at various levels. But it was really nice to see so many different topics this time. So it should be a great opportunity for the community going forward.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Not. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
John, you are the man.
Good job, everybody.
On the day John
Scrivener's error.